Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining me. Tonight, I want to ask you, have you ever been so sick that you ended up in the doctor's office, maybe the emergency room, or maybe the hospital? If you answered yes, I want you to think of an important component to that, your nurse. When in that situation, do you want a nurse that just gets your basic needs met, doesn't really talk to you, doesn't really acknowledge you, just maybe gives you your medication and goes about their day? Or do you want a nurse that's compassionate and sympathetic to what's happening and that's able to help you feel better emotionally, even if you aren't feeling that great physically? Nurses have rough jobs where they work hard and they don't necessarily get paid a lot to work as hard as they do. Nurses typically work long shifts, especially if they're in hospitals. They're working 12-hour shifts typically, if not longer. They're on their feet a lot. They don't get a lot of breaks. And they have a median wage in North Carolina for a nurse who has an associate's degree in nursing of about $45,820 a year. This is before taxes are taken out. This is before any insurance that their employer may be providing for them is taken out. And this is what they live on to provide for their families and stuff. Now, keep in mind, your nurse is the person that's responsible for giving you medication. There are some nurses that are on wound care teams. The whole nursing field just has a plethora of things that have very intense responsibilities. So, what is society looking to do to help with that? Where we may be hoping that maybe they're looking for more nursing assistants to be able to help nurses out with responsibilities that they may not have to do. They have a nursing assistant to do. You might think this was the case, and typically if you're in a hospital in America, you might see a nursing assistant. But some other countries are looking to other options that aren't necessarily as appealing. One thing they're looking to do is replacing nurses with robots. Some places they're looking to replace your scrub-in nurse in the operating room, the person that makes sure everybody is clean and is helping provide a sterile environment, with a robot. Some places in Japan, they are looking to replace nurses with robots because of the fact that robots have the ability to disconnect and they aren't as compassionate per se with the person. They don't get as attached, so that if something happens to the person, it doesn't affect the nurses badly. And while some people may find this appealing, we have seen in history where that compassion and that care, that affection is necessary for humans. So if you were in hospice or in the hospital with a terminal illness, what would you want? Would you want a robot that just gives you your medication, might say some things that it's programmed to say to you? Or do you want a nurse that can be there and reassure you that it's okay and that you're going to be okay, and, well, okay in a broad term, and that it's okay to let go? Places where we've seen this lack, or the effects of this lack of affection and compassion, have not been sparse. It was common in the early 1900s with a experiment that was done by Rene Spitz on infants, and he separated them, and some infants went to orphanages where there was a lack of compassion and affection, and then the other group of infants were raised in a prison daycare with their mothers there, and they got that maternal affection. Children that were raised in the prison daycare developed significantly better than the children that were raised in orphanages with that lack of affection, although in both places their basic needs were met. This can also be seen in Harry Harlow's experiment with rhesus monkeys in the early 1950s. He set up an experiment where some monkeys had only a wire mother to go to get milk from, so their basic needs were met, and some monkeys had the choice between just a wire mother to get milk from, but also a wire mother that was covered in like a mesh material where it was soft and it provided that sense of affection for them to also get milk from. In this case, the monkeys that had the ability to access the wire mother with the mesh developed better and typically stayed more towards the wire mother with the mesh on it. And monkeys that only had the wire mother with no mesh did not develop as well and developed some very bizarre attitudes afterwards. So, if this has been seen in infants and in infant monkeys, when does this need really stop? Do we ever stop really needing that compassion that a nurse can provide in a medical setting? We don't. And my question for you is, would you really want a robot taking care of you, or would you want a nurse that would sympathize with you? We need to help out our nurses, and we need to prevent the use of robots replacing nurses in America. This can be done through things like bringing in more nursing assistants and giving them more responsibilities in their trainings. We have opportunities and we have our resources. We just need to use them better. Thank you for joining me this week. I really enjoyed the class with everybody and getting to know everybody, and I hope you have a good rest of the summer.